Hello everybody and welcome back to another Underdog episode. Today we got Season 4, Episode 7, Hunt. Misner is sitting in a dim-lit room. He's staring at Alan, who's staring right back at him. Alan has metal clamps around his feet, digging into his skin. His hands are tied behind the chair he's sitting in, and his mask is off. Misner is holding a pistol in his hands, leaning it between his legs. "How's the time slower thingy work?" Misner squints his eyes at Alan, taking a moment to reply. "A zome of time." That's what he called it. I asked how it works, not his stupid-ass name. Let's just rewind a sec, okay? I'm Derek Misner. You run this place, Derek? Misner points to the S tattooed on his forehead. I was the first member. Built this organization from the ground up. Why? What do you guys even do? We take out people who don't need to be around anymore. And I was next? Misner chuckles, leaning back in his chair. You are not our target. Alan thinks for a second, beginning to piece things together. Underdog is. You ever mention O'Reilly? No. What's it to you? Misner's grip on the pistol tightens. Why did you break in? Why'd you blow up that building? You harmed a lot of people trying to kill one person. Misner raises the gun at Alan's head. Why did you break in? Alan doesn't flinch. He just continues staring at Misner. Why do you want to kill Underdog so bad? Misner places the tip of the barrel on Alan's forehead and places his finger over the trigger. As he contemplates shooting, a serpent enters the room. Sir, there's been another breach. Misner lowers the gun and stuffs it back into the holster on his side, getting out of the chair and stepping towards the serpent. Where? E6, Western Wing. Misner points at Alan. Get me a squad over comms and watch him. The serpent nods and Misner leaves the room. The serpent sits on the chair, a woman with short auburn hair and dark brown eyes. Who broke in? Your friend. Alan shrugs. Not really a friend. The girl rolls her eyes. The wind is blowing against the warehouse, banging against the metal plates of the wall. The sun is almost completely set, but the moon is nowhere to be found. On the inside, Jake, Miranda, and Zara are lounging around. Jake, though, is squinting his eyes and biting his lip and acting as if he's trying to listen to something. Miranda and Zara notice this, occasionally glancing over to him. So, when are we going to start worrying about Alan? You said he just ran off alone? Zara nods, looking back at Miranda. How about, when will we start worrying about Jake? Zara says loud enough so Jake can hear, but he barely notices. Zara sighs and gets off the couch he's sitting on and walks over to Jake, who's standing around. Jake. Jake snaps out of his daze and looks to Zara, raising his eyebrow.
What?
What's up with you?
What's that supposed to mean?
Zara exhales deeply and droops her head before looking back up at Jake with a less stern expression. Just tell me what's going on. Jake looks past Zara to Miranda, who gives a subtle nod, still sitting on the couch.
I promise there's nothing going on.
Jake, are you hearing voices? Miranda covers his mouth as he's trying to hide a laugh, and Jake looks at Zara with a bewildered expression.
What?
Oh, because that's the craziest thing you guys have heard all year. Jake stares at Zara for another second before snapping his head around, scanning the other side of the warehouse. The wind continues to blow against the wall. Jake steps away from Zara and towards the front door. Jake swings the front door open and goes outside, the wind hitting his face immediately. Zara follows him out, but Miranda stays seated. Zara shuts the door behind her and follows after Jake, dead set. Jake looks around the outside landscape frantically, seeing the hill and fields in the distance. Jake turns around to Zara.
You hear that?
Hear what? The wind muffles their voices slightly as Jake starts to flinch and twitch. All of a sudden, Jake tilts his head up towards the sky and notices the absence of the pink moons. Jake snaps his head to Zara, looking at her with wild eyes.
They're gone.
Zara scrunches her face in confusion before looking up and seeing the absence of the moons as well, her face dropping. It was just there last night. Jake begins to mutter to himself.
It must be connected.
Zara hears him and walks up to him. Jake, what the hell is up with you? Actually.
You don't hear it. The wind? The shuffling?
Zara shakes her head. Shuffling? Jake shakes his head again, beginning to get uncomfortable. He reaches up for his ears and the camera starts to zoom and shake before it cuts to Dylan in the Underdog suit. He's walking through a dark corridor holding onto the Wanderer blades. The hallway is long, narrow, and empty. There's a crackling sound behind him, and the camera turns around to show the wall on fire, tiny embers flying off of Dylan's hand. Dylan stops as the sound of pattering boots comes from his left. He sheaths the blade in his right hand onto his back and clenches his fist, charging it up, making it glow pink. He lunges his right hand across his body and into the wall to his left, crashing a giant hole into it. As the drywall scatters across the floor, the serpents in the other hallway stop running and turns toward the rubble. Dylan steps over the jagged opening and onto the sleek white floor. It's him! Fire! The serpents open fire, but Dylan stops the bullets and repels them around him, creating a path through the bullets. Dylan holds his hand out towards the serpents and flips his hand, and 3 of the serpents freeze from head to toe, getting covered in a thick blanket of ice. He uses his gravity powers to slide them across the floor, tumbling into other serpents. Now, only 2 stand in Dylan's way, and 1 tries to run at him, his gun discarded on the floor. He raises his fist in an effort to punch Dylan. Dylan throws him to the side with a slide of his left hand. The other serpent jabs the butt of his gun at Dylan's chest. He gets knocked back by the impact, but quickly gathers himself and punches the serpent and then stabbing him with a sickle of ice. He pulls out the sickle, dripping blood onto the floor. Dylan tosses the sickle to the ground, shattering it into pieces. He pushes the serpent's body to the ground and turns around, beginning to walk the original way he was going. It cuts to a shot of Dylan walking, but in black and white, with grain and scanning lines. It pans to a serpent looking at a monitor, a camera looking down the hallway Dylan is in. The serpent picks up the walkie-talkie on the table and starts a transmission. He's made it past Team 1. A voice comes from the other end of the walkie. Copy. Team 2's out. The walkie crackles to silence, and it cuts to Alan in the dim room, still with the auburn-haired girl. How many teams you got prepped for him? Enough. You know, with the right bribe, I would help you guys. The girl spits out a harsh laugh. Absolutely not. Alan shrugs, toying with the buy-ins, holding his hands behind the chair. Just some food for thought. Why were you by yourself? Your team was here, weren't they? The Zone of Time dude told me to look for something. The girl raises an eyebrow. I think he just tricked you. Alan shakes his head, exhaling, looking around the room. How did you manage to join such a prestigious organization? Alan says, dripping with mockery. Wouldn't you like to know? Alan bends his finger and tries to dig them between the opening of the zip ties. No offense, but Underdog is going to tear through all your soldiers. The girl looks at Alan, furrowing her brows and leaning closer to him. He acts on impulse. We act on discipline and training. Well, his impulse is scarier than you think. The girl's walkie crackles again, and the girl flickers her eyes to it. He's made it past Team 2. What do we do? The girl reaches up, but stops and looks at Alan, who's got a smug look plastered on his face. She's about to start a transmission before Misner's voice crackles over the walkie. Lure him to the mess hall. Ambrosia, get the speedster and bring him down here. Alan's smug face drops as he stares at Ambrosia with slight terror. Time for a stroll. Ambrosia gets out her chair and unholsters her pistol before jabbing the butt of the gun into Alan's head. It cuts to the inside of a sack, light peering through. Blurs of black can be seen as the person walking along rows of the metal clamps on their feet banging against the mall's ground. They look around and see the feet of the person dragging them along, as well as their hands tied behind their back, tugging on the binds. The person yanks them forward, and someone else grabs the back-covered person and begins to drag them along again, this time up a small set of steps, before getting onto the blank metal surface. The sack suddenly gets ripped off Alan's face, and the bright lights fill his vision, disorienting him. As the blur starts to fade, the earlier black blurs begin to shape into Serpent soldiers. Rows of them facing away from him, at least 20 filling the rows. Alan looks around snappily before feeling a hand on his shoulder. He looks to his right and sees Misner standing there with a tiny grin on his lips. Hey, Speedy. What is this? Misner points to a ledge with a railing on the floor above the lined-up serpents. Any second now, Underdog is going to be right there begging for his life. You all just love underestimating him. We've got him outnumbered. Alan lets out a laugh before Misner looks away from Alan and back to the railing. Right on cue. Alan looks to the railing, and it cuts to Zara, looking through the grate on the top of the roof of the warehouse, the wind still hitting against the walls. Jake is in the background, lying on the couch Miranda is sitting on. She's curled up and looking at Zara. Have any news outlets reported on it? So what if they did? Like they can explain it? How long till we go back to the mall and look for Alan? I want to be here for Jake, but not for Alan? Zara turns around to Miranda, still standing in the same place. That's not how it is. He could be dead right now. Miranda, he... Zara exhales sharply, flickering her eyes to Jake on the couch before turning back around and storming towards the main console. Miranda gets up and walks behind Zara. I'm going to the mall. Zara freezes and sharply turns around. What? No, you're not. Miranda storms off to the side and picks up her pitchfork, holstering it onto her back. Just try and stop me. Zara turns to the side table and reaches to her wand, but stops and just lets Miranda leave out the front door. Zara sighs and turns back to the console. It cuts at the feet of Underdog walking on the tile floor of the mall. His pace slows down as he reaches the glass railing. He puts his hands on it and he overlooks the rows of Serpent soldiers, lined up, holding their weapons. Dylan sees Misner standing next to Alan, his eyes widening. Misner notices this and raises his eyebrows before shouting across the mess hall, "Look who it is!" The Serpents raise their heads and look at Dylan and immediately arm their weapons, ready to fire. Misner looks down at the soldiers. Easy! Like I said, we're only here. Misner looks back at Dylan, who's still leaning against the railing. To bargain. Bargain! Dylan shouts across the hall. I'm glad you asked. It's a simple choice, really. Dylan removes his hands from the railing and crosses his arms, still staring down at Misner. Turn yourself in, or... Misner unholsters his pistol from his hip and cocks it, aiming the barrel at the back of Alan's head. He dies. Alan stiffens and snaps his head up to Dylan, silently screaming. Dylan drops his arms and flashes his eyes to Alan. Your choice. What did I ever do to you? You seriously don't know. You guys just come out of nowhere and start obsessing over me. Why? What did you do with my daughter? Dylan scrunches his face in confusion. What? Misner's eye twitches and he steps closer to Alan with the gun. You really want your friend to die? Dylan bites his lip behind his mask, contemplating everything. Dylan looks back at Alan, terror filling his eyes. He looks down to the metal clamps on Alan's feet, and his heart rate only quickens. Don't make me start counting. Dylan looks back at Misner, taking a long breath along with a dragged-out blank. 3! Dylan stays put, the slight compassion he once had fading away, replaced by his ego. Misner shakes his head before stepping closer to Alan, the barrel's tip touching his head. 2! Alan mouths the words, please, but Dylan ignores it. Can you just give me a second? 1! Dylan's breath hitches, and he closes his eyes as the sound of the gun shooting zooms through the air. Alan falls to the ground, collapsing onto the stage with a hole ripped through his head. Misner holsters the pistol back and shakes his head. How disappointing. Dylan opens his eyes and looks down, seeing Alan's lifeless body, running a hand over his masked face. Misner looks at the distraught Dylan with a frown on his face. You can take the body on your way out. Dylan hears the crackle behind him, and he was waiting on. Wouldn't want it to burn. Misner furrows his eyebrows, sniffing the air and getting a faint hint of smoke. Misner's eyes widen, and he yells suddenly, Fire! The Serpents open fire immediately after Misner shouts, and Dylan ducks away towards the burning hallway. Fire engulfs the walls and roof, some parts of it caving in and tumbling down. Dylan turns around and hears the pattering of the Serpents. He lights a fire in his hand and chucks a fireball at the roof above the mess hall, igniting another fire. Dylan starts flight and thrusts himself through the roof. Outside, the night is oddly dark. Noticing this, Dylan looks around and notices the absence of the double pink moons. Confused, he flies above the mall and admires the glowing fire that has overtaken the building, the thought of Alan nagging the back of his mind. Inside the mall, the Serpents are scrambling to get out, including Misner. As blood flows out of Alan's head, the fire starts to enclose the mess hall. While chaos ensues, Miranda, in the young devil costume and her pitchfork, comes running towards Alan's lifeless body. Upon noticing this, Miranda bites back the urge to cry and instead kneels down and lifts up the body. She starts to trek through the way she came in, slower now as she's holding Alan's body. It cuts to the Serpents running the exits, burning debris falling on some of them. Mr. and a group of 5 serpents get out and exit. Outside, Mr. gets in front of them and starts to run, with them following. Dylan sees this and flies towards them. The camera stays on them all as one half is drowning in flames, the fire still spreading. It cuts to the grave. The dirt is parted straight down the middle. A soft layer of soil separating the ground and whoever lies beneath.